morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're watching or listening. My name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. For today's lecture, ladies and gentlemen, we'll provide another installment into our quasi-series on the long-standing Latin legal maxims. And this lecture, similar to the previous lectures on Latin legal maxims, is going to be relatively short. I'm going to aim to make it even shorter because it's a legal maxim that doesn't really require much explaining. We can all relate to it. We're probably all even familiarized with it, maybe not in the Latin translation, but the concept, the idea, the principle, and how it's supposed to be applied in courts. That principle being, Qui Parcit Nocientbus Punit. How does that translate? It translates almost directly and perfectly to not punishing the guilty is punishing the innocent. Not holding the guilty accountable is punishing the innocent. And this is going to be my kind of distant contribution to the whole Epstein files and the global child trafficking ring, at least as of now, conversation and discussion that's going on, and why it's so important that we get to the bottom of this very disturbing potential conflict, if it's not all conjured up by AI deepfakes and AI constructed images. If we find that it's true, this principle is directly going to apply. That if these individuals, again, if proven beyond a reasonable doubt, that would be the evidentiary standard, beyond a reasonable doubt, enacted or partook in criminal activities, to not punish them, to not hold them accountable, would be to punish not only the victims in those instances, it would make a portrayal to the entire union, to the entire world, that the judiciary, if it hasn't already been made evident, the judiciary of the U.S. sides with the wicked and protects the wicked before applying, enacting, and providing for a just outcome. To not punish the wicked, and it's a difficult concept to reconcile with the founding generation, because the founding generation was also of the mind that it's better to let 100 guilty men walk free than it is to convict one innocent man. So what that means, to combine that idea with this doctrine, with this long-standing Latin legal principle, is we have to apply that very difficult, very high-reaching evidentiary standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. Not just 99%, but 99.99999 infinitely repeating percent confidence that someone did what is being alleged or accused against them, or accused of them. And especially with an instance like the alleged global human trafficking ring, that is a heavy charge to levy against someone. That is a heavy accusation, because that's not just a criminal act. That's moral depravity. That's ethical. I mean, that is abject apathy. Abject. There, for the vast majority of all of human history, there are things that people tend to compromise on their liberties, on their securities, on their privileges. But when it comes to children, and when it comes to the exploitation of children, that's where the line has been drawn for the vast majority of humans throughout all of human history. To apply this legal maxim, if those individuals are shown beyond a shadow of a doubt, any reasonable doubt, that they did in fact do what is pictured and detailed in those files and those released files, and they aren't punished, if they aren't held accountable, that would be greater cause than the grievances that were stated in 1776 against the British Crown. Because that's not simply a legal issue. That's not a difference of opinion. That is, and it's no government's business to get involved in moral compasses. It is the citizens' business to inform and construct their moral compasses. But for the individuals, if proven beyond a reasonable doubt, go unpunished of their actions, you will destroy all confidence in certainly the judiciary and more than likely in the legislative and executive as well. Which is why it's so important, not just for the citizenry, not just for the victims, but also for the government to uphold Qui Parcit Nocientbus Innocentus Punit. Do not disregard the innocent. Do not protect the wicked. That is grounds perfectly fermented for actions, for events that virtually everybody would prefer not to take place. Because, as Jefferson said in the U.S. Declaration of Independence, if I remember correctly, that yes, the cause taken here is formidable, but it is one worth doing. And we don't do it carelessly, because restructuring a government, rather resisting tyranny, correcting tyranny, is just as difficult, if not less difficult, than forming and establishing an entirely new government. And they made that very evident with the many years it took to have the Articles recognized, and then by the time the Articles of Confederation were recognized, basically the U.S. Constitution had come in and had taken into place. Point being, it's important to know this as a citizen, but also to those in government. If you want to uphold the integrity of your government, you better apply this principle, otherwise you're going to tick off your citizenry, and when you do that, it's inevitable that you're going to be replaced, that you're going to be maybe completely removed, and certainly have a new government installed, bring about tumultuous times. Everything that can be avoided if you don't apply that principle will come about, for maybe the better, maybe the worse. I know certainly the outcomes that the founders had were just as questionable as the outcomes would be today if such a change were to take place. But anyway, I've gone on far too long. I meant to keep this one nice and short because it was such a relatable principle. I see that I've failed to do that, but hopefully you enjoyed the information. Regardless, if you have any questions about this legal concept, maybe about the concepts in the past, or maybe there's a concept you'd like me to cover in a future topic, in a future lecture, excuse me, I meant to say topic to cover in a future lecture, go ahead and post those down in the comments, because the entire purpose of the Calhoun School of Law is to equip you with the necessary skills and information to combat any sort of lawfare that will be waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So please, if you have any questions, go ahead and post them down in the comments. Excellent. So my name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. I hope, again, you enjoyed this lecture, and if not, while you're down in the comments, go ahead and let me know how I can do better so I can best serve that purpose of helping you. I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and until I see y'all in the next lecture for the next topic, I bid you all farewell.